checked into room 103 for a quiet night's rest. But by morning, their names had vanished from the motel's registry, and the receptionist swore that room had been locked for 10 years. The Haunted Motel rain hammered the windshield as Daniel and Emily pulled into the dimly lit parking lot of the Whispering Pines Motel. Tucked away on a forgotten stretch of highway, the place looked like it hadn't seen a full house since the 80s. Neon letters flickered erratically above the office. Vacancy. Daniel killed the engine and turned to Emily. Not exactly 5 stars, but it's the only place for miles. Emily glanced at the dark windows lining the motel building. As long as it has a bed and running water, I don't care. They grabbed their bags and rushed inside the small front office, brushing off raindrops. The bell above the door jingled, echoing awkwardly in the quiet room. Behind the counter stood an elderly man with sunken eyes and a stiff posture. He wore a name tag that read Frank. Need a room? Frank's voice was hoarse, as if unused. Yeah, Daniel replied, setting his ID on the counter. Just for one night. We're passing through. Frank didn't ask questions. He handed them a rusty key labeled Room 103. Checkout's at 10, he said, eyes briefly darting to a photo on the wall. An old black and white image of the motel with a dark, shadowy figure barely visible in the window of the far left room. Room 103. Neither of them noticed. The hallway was musty, the air thick with the scent of damp carpet and old wallpaper glue. The light above room 103 buzzed faintly. Emily unlocked the door, and they stepped inside. To their surprise, the room wasn't terrible. A queen-size bed with slightly outdated bedding, a nightstand, a faded landscape painting above the headboard, and a small bathroom tucked behind a sliding door. Emily sighed in relief. Better than I expected. Daniel set his bag down. Let's get some rest. We got a long drive tomorrow. But sleep didn't come easily. Around midnight, Emily stirred. A scratching sound came from the bathroom. Not loud, but steady. She nudged Daniel. Did you hear that? Daniel groaned. Probably pipes, old building. Still, the sound grew louder, more deliberate, like fingernails on tile. Emily sat up. That's not pipes. Daniel grabbed the flashlight from his bag and approached the bathroom. He flicked the light switch. Nothing. The bulb was dead. He opened the door slowly. The flashlight beam swept across the bathroom. Empty. Clean. But the mirror above the sink was fogged over, as if someone had just showered. Weird, he muttered. Emily stepped in behind him. The mirror remained fogged despite the cool air. She wiped it with her sleeve and froze. For just a moment, another face appeared beside hers in the reflection. A pale, hollow-eyed woman with black hair dripping wet, staring at her with an expression of sorrow or warning. She gasped and stumbled back. Did you see that? Daniel swung the flashlight toward the mirror. Nothing. Just their own reflections. I swear someone was there, Emily said, her voice shaking. They left the bathroom light on and climbed back into bed, huddled closer this time. The scratching stopped, but the feeling of being watched lingered, thick in the air. Morning came with gray light filtering through the blinds. They dressed quickly and headed to the front office to check out. Frank stood behind the counter, sipping from a chipped mug. We're checking out of 103, Daniel said, dropping the key on the desk. Frank stared at him, confused. Room 103? Yeah. Is something wrong? Frank looked down at a dusty guest logbook and flipped through several pages. Then he slowly raised his eyes. "We haven't rented that room in 10 years. Emily frowned. "What are you talking about? You gave us the key last night." Frank shook his head. "I never hand out that key. That room's sealed. It's condemned." Daniel's voice rose. "Check your log. We signed in." Frank turned the book around. Their names weren't there. The last entry on the page was from 2 days ago. Someone else entirely. Emily's face drained of color. "Check the security. Cameras. We walked in here, right through that door." Frank pointed to an old TV monitor in the corner. Grainy footage played from a single black and white feed. It showed the front desk. The timestamp read 9:43 p.m. They watched as the door opened, but no one entered. Frank leaned in closer. "I've worked here 30 years. You're not the first ones to show up after a storm asking for room 103, and none of them ever show up on camera." Daniel's voice was barely a whisper. "Then who gave us the key?" Frank didn't answer. He opened a drawer, pulled out a box of old motel keys, and rummaged through it. Slowly, he raised one in his hand. Room 103. The key Daniel had returned was still in the drawer, unmoved, untouched. Emily stepped back. "We're leaving." Frank nodded slowly. "I would, too." They walked out into the sunlight, hearts pounding. As they approached their car, Daniel glanced back at the Motel 1 last time. A figure stood at the window of room 103, watching them. Daniel gripped the steering wheel tighter as the motel faded into the rearview mirror. The rain had stopped, but the clouds still hung low and heavy, like a warning that hadn't yet passed. Emily sat in silence, staring out the window, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. "That wasn't a dream," she said finally. "I know what I saw in that mirror." Daniel nodded slowly. "And I know we slept in that room. I remember the sheets, the smell, that creaking sound in the hallway." He trailed off, talking about it made it too real. They drove for nearly an hour in tense silence before pulling into a gas station. Daniel filled up the tank while Emily walked inside to grab coffee. When she returned, her face was pale. "You're not going to believe this," she said, handing him a coffee. "What now?" She held up her phone. "I checked the date. Today's not the next day." Daniel frowned. "What do you mean?" "It's 2 days later. We're missing a whole day." Daniel unlocked his own phone. Same date, March 3rd. But they had checked in on March 1st. He blinked. "That can't be right. We left the motel just this morning." "No, we think we did. But if our phones are right, we stayed there for 2 nights and don't remember the second one." A cold sensation crept down his spine. What if we didn't just stay in that room? What if something happened to us in there? Unable to shake the unease, they pulled off the highway and found a small diner, hoping food might ground them. The place was warm and welcoming. Wooden booths, the smell of fresh coffee and pancakes in the air. They sat near the window. The waitress, a kind-looking woman in her 60s, poured them coffee without asking. "You two look like you've seen a ghost," she said with a smile. Daniel tried to laugh, but it came out awkward. "We came from that old motel up the road, Whispering Pines." Her smile faded immediately. She looked around, then lowered her voice. "You stayed there?" Emily nodded. Room 103. The waitress took a small step back. You're lucky to be sitting here then. Daniel leaned forward. You know something about it. She hesitated. I shouldn't say too much. Folks around here don't like stirring up the past. But that room's been closed for years. Ever since the Grayson couple disappeared. Emily exchanged a glance with Daniel. Disappeared. They were traveling through, checked in during a storm, just like you. Next morning they were gone. Car still in the lot. Belongings still in the room. No sign of struggle, just vanished. Daniel's mouth went dry. When was this? The waitress looked off toward the window. About 10 years ago. Emily felt her stomach twist. There was a photo in the motel office, a black and white picture. Room 103 had something strange in the window. The woman nodded slowly. People say it's her, Mrs. Grayson. She's still waiting. Daniel's voice dropped. Waiting for what? The waitress didn't answer. She just poured more coffee and moved on to another table. That night, Daniel and Emily checked into a new hotel in the next town. A bright, modern place with clean white sheets, working lamps, and music playing softly in the lobby. But peace didn't follow them. Emily awoke at 3:03 a.m. to a soft whispering sound, barely audible but persistent. She sat up and looked around. The TV was off. Daniel was asleep. The whispering grew louder, though it made no sense. Like a voice underwater, she picked up her phone to check the time again. 3:03, but the date flashed briefly. March the 2nd, then it changed back to March 3rd. Emily's heart pounded. She opened her camera roll, looking for photos from the last 2 days. There were none, except one, a single image she didn't remember taking. It was blurry and dim. A woman standing in front of a cracked motel mirror, her back to the camera, hair soaking wet. She dropped the phone. Daniel, wake up. He sat up groggily. What? What's wrong? She showed him the photo. He stared at it for a long time. That's room 103. But we didn't take that picture, did we? Daniel's voice was barely a whisper. I don't think we ever left. Unable to sleep, they searched online for anything they could find about Whispering Pines Motel. Articles were few, but one caught their attention. A blog post titled, Rooms That Shouldn't Exist. One entry detailed Room 103. Travelers report checking into Room 103, only to discover later that the room was supposed to be condemned after a structural collapse 10 years ago. Witnesses describe mirrors that fog with no heat, scratches behind the walls, and a sense of lost time. Most troubling of all, some guests have returned home to find photos on their devices they never took, and voices whispering their names at night. Emily scrolled to the comments. One stood out. If you stayed there and made it out, don't go back. The room remembers you, and it hates being forgotten. Daniel closed the laptop. We need to end this. Emily looked at him. What are you thinking? He stared at the rain hitting the window. We're going back. The sky was a dull gray, clouds hanging like heavy curtains over the winding road that led them back to Whispering Pines. The trees on either side seemed taller, darker, as if they had grown during their absence, though it had only been a day since they'd fled. Daniel's grip on the steering wheel was tight. Emily sat beside him, clutching her phone with both hands. Neither of them spoke. The silence between them wasn't born of fear. It was focus. a mutual understanding that whatever waited at that motel, they had to face it. When the old neon sign of Whispering Pines came into view, flickering faintly against the overcast sky, a chill ran through them both. It looked even more abandoned than before. The office light was off. No cars in the lot. No sign of life. Daniel pulled up to the same parking space as before. "I still remember every details of that room," he said softly. "Even though they said we were never there." Emily nodded. "We need answers." They stepped out of the car. The gravel crunched under their feet as they walked to the front office. The door was locked. The open sign was off. No one answered when Daniel knocked. "Let's try the room," he said. Room 103 looked the same. The faded number, the darkened window. Daniel reached out and turned the knob. Unlocked. The door creaked open slowly, revealing the room exactly as they remembered. Dim light, peeling wallpaper, the scent of mildew and something faintly sweet, like old perfume. Emily stepped in first. The mirror above the dresser was fogged, even though the room was cold. She moved toward it, her breath quickening. "There's something about this mirror," she whispered. "I saw something here that night." Daniel joined her, staring at their reflections, distorted slightly, like the glass was rippling. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then the door slammed shut behind them. Emily spun around. "Did you?" "No," Daniel said, crossing the room and trying the door. "Locked. It won't open." The lights flickered. Then the old radio on the nightstand clicked on with a soft hum. Static filled the room, low and steady. Slowly, a voice began to emerge, soft, female, barely audible. "You came back." Emily backed toward Daniel. "Did you hear that?" The voice continued, louder now. "Why did you leave me here?" Daniel walked to the radio and unplugged it. The voice stopped, but the mirror fogged up again. This time, words formed on the glass. "Stay with me," Emily gasped. "It's her, the woman in the photo." Daniel moved closer to the mirror, his breath fogging the glass further. "Why us?" Suddenly, the radio clicked on again, still unplugged. The voice was clearer this time. "You opened the door. You saw me. Now I see you." Emily grabbed Daniel's arm. "We need to get out. Now." He nodded and turned back to the door, but the handle was ice cold. It wouldn't budge. Then the lights went out. Total darkness swallowed the room. Emily fumbled for her phone, turning on the flashlight. The beam flickered across the mirror. The reflection no longer showed them. It showed the empty room. Daniel's voice was barely a whisper. "Why can't we see ourselves?" Then, from behind them, a soft knock 3 times on the bathroom door. They froze. The bathroom had been empty, hadn't it? The knob turned slowly. The door creaked open an inch, then stopped. Emily backed toward the far wall. "This isn't real. This can't be real." Daniel, breathing heavily, stepped forward. "Who's there?" The door swung fully open. Inside was only darkness. Daniel turned his flashlight toward the mirror again. Their reflections had returned, but they weren't alone. Standing behind them in the glass was a woman, pale, drenched, her eyes hollow. Emily spun around. No one. She looked back at the mirror. Still there. "She's only in the reflection," Emily said shakily. "She's trapped." Daniel suddenly remembered something from the blog post. The The room remembers you, and it hates being forgotten. We saw her. We left. She's angry, he said. She wants to be acknowledged. He stepped in front of the mirror. Who are you? The fog cleared slightly, revealing a clearer image of the woman. Her mouth moved slowly. Emily watched closely. She's mouthing something, Daniel whispered. Write it down. Emily grabbed a pen from the nightstand and began scribbling down the silent words the woman formed. You see me. You can help. Free me. The mirror began to crack, thin lines spidering out from the center. Emily dropped the pen. What do we do? Daniel's eyes darted around the room. The radio, the mirror, they're connected. Maybe she's trapped in the mirror, like a prison. He picked up the chair and hesitated. If we break it, maybe she can leave. Or something worse gets out. Another voice whispered now, clear and desperate. Please, let me go. Daniel looked at Emily. She nodded. He lifted the chair and smashed it into the mirror. Glass shattered everywhere. The room filled with a gust of cold air, like a breath finally released after years of holding it in. Then, silence. The lights flickered back on. The door creaked open slowly. The radio remained off. Emily stepped forward and looked at the broken mirror. No reflection, just pieces of shattered glass. Outside, the sun had begun to rise. They walked out of room 103 without looking back. As they reached the car, Daniel turned to Emily. Do you think she's gone? Emily glanced at the window of room 103 for the first time. It was empty. The drive back to the city was eerily quiet. Daniel and Emily barely spoke, both lost in thought. The breaking of the mirror, the mysterious figure, the desperate whispers. It all lingered like smoke in the air. They had escaped room 103, but a heaviness followed them, like something was riding in the back seat. By the time they reached their apartment, the sun had fully risen. Everything looked normal. The mail was stacked neatly at the door. The neighbors were walking their dogs, and the city buzzed with its usual rhythm. But for Daniel and Emily, nothing felt the same. Inside, Emily dropped her bag and sank onto the couch. We should feel relieved, she said. But I don't. Something still feels wrong. Daniel nodded. I feel it too. Like we brought something back with us. He walked over to the mirror in the hallway. The same mirror they passed every day without thinking. Now, he stared into it with caution. Emily joined him. You don't think? No, he said quickly. It's just a normal mirror. But as he turned to walk away, Emily gasped. Daniel, look. He turned back. There in the corner of the mirror, not in the room, stood a faint silhouette. Faint, blurred, but unmistakably a figure. Daniel blinked. It was gone. Did you see it? Emily asked, her voice trembling. I did, he replied. He went into the bedroom, checked every corner, every shadow. Nothing. The apartment was empty. Emily's phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. She read it aloud. Thank you. Daniel looked over her shoulder. Who sent that? No idea. There's no number. Just blank. They sat in silence. Maybe, just maybe, it was the spirit's final goodbye. That night, they tried to go back to normal. They ordered dinner, watched a comedy, even laughed a little. But when the clock struck midnight, the lights flickered just once. Then Emily's phone buzzed again. Another message. "You see me?" Daniel stared at the screen. "Okay, this isn't over." Emily locked her phone and stood up. This isn't just a haunting. It's a connection. They decided to investigate further. Daniel went to his laptop and began digging through old town records. Emily searched social media for ghost stories, legends, anything about Whispering Pines or Room 103. Hours passed. Finally, Daniel leaned back, rubbing his eyes. "I found something." He turned to the screen to Emily. An old news article, dated 1984. "Woman missing after storm at Whispering Pines Motel." The article described a woman named Lena Morrow, age 29, who vanished during a thunderstorm while staying at the motel. Staff claimed she had never checked in. Her belongings were found in room 103, but the room had reportedly been closed for renovations for years. Emily read the last line aloud. "The mirror in room 103 was shattered the following morning. No one knows why." Daniel scrolled further. There's more. Her family claimed Lena was calling them days after she disappeared. They could hear her breathing, but no one ever found her. Emily whispered, "She's been trapped this whole time. And maybe we broke the mirror too late. Maybe now she's free, but not gone." Suddenly, a picture frame fell from the wall with a loud crash. They jumped. The frame had held a photo of them on their last vacation. The glass had cracked diagonally, much like the mirror in room 103. Daniel stared at it. "She's trying to communicate." Emily picked up the photo and noticed something odd. In the reflection of the window behind them, a faint face, barely visible, seemed to hover just over Emily's shoulder. She hadn't seen that before. She was always there, Emily whispered. That night, they didn't sleep. They left the lights on, every door open, music playing low to break the silence. But at 3:07 a.m., the hallway light dimmed, slowly, then flickered. Emily sat up. "Did you see that?" Before Daniel could respond, their bedroom mirror began to fog up. Emily approached cautiously. Words began to appear again. "You freed me, but others remain." Emily turned to Daniel. "What does that mean?" Daniel stared at the message. "There are more, maybe, trapped like her, in other mirrors, other rooms." Suddenly the fog faded and new words appeared. "Some do not want to leave." That chilled them both. This wasn't just about one spirit. It was about a larger force, something connected, something ancient, perhaps. The next morning, Emily suggested they visit Lena's family, whose name was mentioned in the article. After some research, they found an address and drove there. An elderly woman opened the door. Her eyes welled up the moment Emily introduced them. "You saw her," the woman said. "Didn't you?" Daniel nodded. "We think she was trying to reach out." "I've waited over 30 years, the woman whispered. "I always felt she wasn't gone, just misplaced, like something had taken her and refused to let her go." Emily hesitated. "We think she was trapped in a mirror." The woman nodded. "It makes sense. Lena always said mirrors made her feel like someone was watching. We never understood." Daniel shared what happened. The motel, room 103, the messages. The woman closed her eyes and smiled faintly. "You did what no one else could. You gave her peace. As they left, Emily felt a strange mix of relief and fear. Daniel turned to her. If there are more spirits trapped, what should we do? Emily looked up at the cloudy sky. We find them, and we help them move on, one by one. Daniel nodded. Starting with that motel, they both looked at each other, knowing the journey wasn't over. In fact, it had only just begun. 2 weeks had passed since Daniel and Emily's visit to Lena Morrow's family. The air in their apartment had grown lighter. No more foggy mirrors, no more messages, no shadows at night. It was as if Lena's presence had finally moved on. But peace came with a price. Curiosity. Daniel couldn't stop researching. He found forums, articles, even local legends from other towns, all talking about places where people vanished without explanation, always leaving behind broken mirrors or static-filled phone calls. Emily, too, felt drawn back to the motel, as though unfinished stories still lingered. "I keep dreaming about the hallway," she told Daniel one morning, "but it's longer now. Endless. And there are doors on both sides. Locked." He looked at her, concerned. Maybe it's a sign. Maybe we're meant to go back. They packed lightly, just essentials and an old camcorder. Daniel dusted off from the closet. This time, they were prepared. Not to run, but to understand. When they arrived at Whispering Pines Motel, everything was as it had been, except for one thing. Room 103 was sealed off. Yellow tape covered the door. A sign read, "Under investigation. Do not enter." They entered the lobby. The same receptionist sat behind the desk. She looked up, surprised. "I remember you too," she said slowly. "Back again?" Daniel nodded. "We just had some unfinished business." She leaned in. "I shouldn't say this, but after you left, someone else tried to stay in that room. They didn't make it through the night. Left in a panic. Said they heard voices calling from the walls." Emily and Daniel exchanged glances. "We want to help," Emily said softly. "Not just that room. Others too." The receptionist's expression changed. "There's more to this place than most people realize. The motel was built over something older. Foundation that date back over 100 years. People say the land used to be a meeting place for those who practiced strange rituals. They believed mirrors could trap memories and spirits." Daniel stepped closer. "How many rooms have stories?" The receptionist hesitated. Then, quietly, she slid a map of the motel across the counter. 5 rooms were marked in red. 103, 108, 111, 202, and 204. Each one, she whispered, has a mirror no one's been able to remove. Even when we tried, they just won't come off the wall. Daniel's voice was steady. "We want to visit each of them, one by one." That evening, the motel was quiet. Most rooms were empty. The sky turned an overcast gray as the sun dipped behind the trees, and a light wind whispered through the broken fence in the back. First, room 108. The air was colder in this room. As they stepped inside, the lights flickered once, then held steady. Daniel placed the camcorder on the dresser, aimed it at the mirror. "Hello," Emily said gently. "If someone is here, we're listening." For several minutes, nothing. Then, a faint outline appeared in the mirror. A child's handprint. Daniel stepped forward. "Who are you?" The fog in the mirror began to spread. Letters formed. I wait for my brother. Emily's heart sank. Do you know where he is? No, response. But the air grew heavy. Sadness filled the room like a rising tide. I promise, Emily said. We'll look for him. As quickly as it appeared, the message faded. They left the room with a chill crawling down their spines. Next, room 111. This one was silent. Too silent. No creaks, no wind, no distant footsteps. Even the clock on the wall had stopped ticking. Daniel pressed record on the camcorder again. If there's someone here, show us a sign. The mirror remained still. Then, one sharp knock. From inside the mirror, Emily gasped. Did you hear that? Daniel nodded. He stepped closer. 3 more knocks. Then words appeared, but backwards, as if from the other side. Turn off the lights. They hesitated. Then Daniel flipped the switch. Darkness. Only the red light of the camcorder blinked. A whisper broke the silence. He took us. He keeps us here. Emily whispered back. Who keeps you here? Silence. Then a word etched itself into the mirror like a scar. The Watcher. They turned the lights back on. The mirror was clear again, but both of them knew the motel was more than a resting place for the lost. Something was holding them, something that didn't want to let go. That night they sat outside on the motel's old wooden bench, the camcorder still in Daniel's hand. Do we keep going? Emily asked. Daniel looked out at the night. We've come this far. They visited room 202 and 204. Each room had a presence, different voices, different energies. Some seemed confused, some frightened, some angry, but all had one thing in common. They couldn't leave, trapped by mirrors, trapped by the Watcher. By dawn, Emily looked exhausted. We can't save them all. No, Daniel said, but we can fight back. He went back into room 103, the heart of the haunting. This time, the tape was gone. The door creaked open, inviting them in. The mirror, though shattered, still hung on the wall. Daniel stood in front of it. If you're still here, he said firmly, we're not afraid of you. The broken pieces shimmered as if stirred by an invisible force. Emily stepped beside him. Release them. Let them go. Suddenly, every light in the room burst with a flicker. The air turned ice cold, and in the mirror, a figure appeared. Not a ghost, but something darker. A shape with no face, no eyes, just a shadow. The camcorder shut off. The windows slammed shut. But Emily didn't flinch. She held up her phone, playing a soft melody, a lullaby her grandmother used to sing. And slowly, the darkness began to retreat. Not from fear, but recognition. One by one, the mirrors in the other rooms began to crack. One by one, the spirits began to fade. And when the sun finally rose, Whispering Pines Motel was silent, but not in fear, in peace. Daniel and Emily stood outside, watching the sunrise. The motel, though still old and weathered, no longer felt heavy. No more whispers, no more shadows. Do you think it's over? Emily asked. Daniel smiled faintly. No, but I think we won this round. As they drove away, their phones buzzed at the same time. They looked. One message from an unknown number. Thank you for remembering us.